quiet morning in July 1918, a boy was born in the small village of Mvezo, nestled in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. He was given the name Rolihlahla Mandela, a name that in his native Xhosa meant troublemaker. But the world would come to know him as Nelson Mandela, a man who would change the course of South Africa's history, bringing an end to apartheid and ushering in a new era of equality, freedom, and hope. Rolihlahla Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, into the Thembu royal family. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a chief and counselor to the Thembu king, but the family lived modestly. When his father passed away when Mandela was just 9 years old, his mother sent him to live with the regent of the Thembu people, Chief Jongan Taba, where his education began in earnest. Mandela's journey took him to the elite University of Fort Hare, the only Western-style university for Black Africans at the time. It was here that Mandela's political consciousness began to take shape. While studying law, he became involved in student politics, participating in boycotts against university policies. It was the first taste of activism for the young man, but his path to revolution was still only beginning. In 1941, Mandela left his studies and fled to Johannesburg to escape an arranged marriage. The city opened his eyes to the harsh realities of racial segregation, poverty, and inequality. He worked a variety of jobs, including as a mine security guard and law clerk, while finishing his degree through correspondence. It was in Johannesburg that Mandela met Walter Sisulu, a key figure in the African National Congress ANC. Sisulu introduced him to the world of politics and law, and together they began to imagine a South Africa where all people, regardless of race, could live freely and equally. Inspired by Sisulu, Mandela enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand, where he earned a law degree and forged friendships with individuals from diverse backgrounds. In 1944, Mandela officially joined the ANC and co-founded the ANC Youth League, which aimed to revitalize the party's approach to fighting the oppressive policies of the South African government. Mandela believed that young Africans had to take a more assertive stance against the apartheid regime, which enforced a brutal system of racial segregation that marginalized Black South Africans and stripped them of their basic human rights. As apartheid intensified under the leadership of the National Party, which came to power in 1948, Mandela's commitment to this struggle deepened. He led numerous campaigns, including the Defiance Campaign in 1952, where he and others encouraged peaceful protests against unjust laws. During this time, Mandela also opened South Africa's first black law firm with his partner Oliver Tambo, offering legal assistance to those oppressed by the system. Mandela's reputation as a leader grew. He was a powerful speaker and organizer, advocating for nonviolent resistance and calling for national unity across racial lines. However, the apartheid regime struck back with force, arresting and imprisoning Mandela multiple times. In 1956, he was arrested along with 156 other leaders and charged with treason. The trial, known as the Treason Trial, lasted for years, but Mandela and his comrades were acquitted in 1961. By the early 1960s, Mandela and the ANC leadership recognized that peaceful resistance alone was not enough. The government's violent repression of protests left the movement with no choice but to consider armed resistance. In 1961, Mandela helped to found Umkhonto we Sizwe the Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC, committed to sabotage as a way to weaken the apartheid state. Mandela went underground, traveling in secret to build support for the armed struggle and gain international backing. However, in 1962, he was arrested once again, this time for leaving the country without permission and inciting workers to strike. His arrest marked the beginning of his long and arduous imprisonment. The most significant moment came in 1964, during the Rivonia trial, when Mandela and several other ANC leaders were tried for sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the government. Facing the death penalty, Mandela made a powerful speech from the dock, stating that he was willing to die for the ideal of a democratic and free society where all South Africans could live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. Mandela was sentenced to life in prison and sent to Robben Island, where he would spend the next 27 years of his life, enduring harsh conditions, physical labor, and isolation from his family and the world. But even in prison, Mandela's spirit remained unbroken. He became a symbol of resistance, inspiring millions both in South Africa and around the globe. Robben Island became a place of immense suffering for Mandela, but it was also where he honed his leadership, teaching younger inmates about politics, law, and the importance of staying united in their struggle. His letters to the outside world, though heavily censored, conveyed a message of resilience and hope. As the years passed, the global anti-apartheid movement gained momentum. From London to New York, people called for the release of Mandela and an end to apartheid. The United Nations, governments, and activists around the world condemned South Africa's regime, isolating the country politically and economically. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison a free man. His release signaled the beginning of the end for apartheid. But Mandela's greatest challenge was yet to come. South Africa was on the brink of civil war, torn apart by racial divisions, poverty, and decades of hatred. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. Nelson Mandela, the man who had once been condemned as a terrorist, became the country's first black president. His election was a moment of profound historical significance, marking the end of over 3 centuries of white minority rule. As president, Mandela's focus was on reconciliation and nation building. He introduced policies aimed at improving the lives of black South Africans while maintaining peace and stability in a country scarred by years of racial violence. One of his most iconic moments came when he donned the jersey of South Africa's rugby team, the Springboks, during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. After stepping down from the presidency in 1999, Mandela remained a global statesman, a tireless advocate for peace, human rights, and the fight against HIV/AIDS, which had devastated South Africa. He was celebrated around the world for his unwavering commitment to justice and equality. In his later years, Mandela's health began to fade, but his presence remained as powerful as ever. In 2010, he made his final public appearance at the FIFA World Cup, hosted in South Africa, a fitting tribute to a man who had united a nation. On December 5, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on. Mandela's life was a testament to the power of resilience, forgiveness, and the belief that one person can change the world. He was, and forever will be, the father of a free South Africa.